Hello and welcome back to another update where I cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war. We start out in the north where positional fighting continues in the direction of Vovchansk. The Russians have captured the northern part of the river line and the northern part of Vovchansk. This had led to a new stage in the fighting where the Russians are working on expanding the front and rotating troops to create and concentrate a larger force here in the northern section of the front line. It looks as if the Russians are entering a new stage here in the northern front, where they'll look to push across the front towards Lipsy, Vesele, the forest patches south of Zaritsia, to gain control over Vovchansk and the river line here north, the Vovcha River, in the northern section of the front, creating this buffer zone and expanding the front line significantly, almost double what they have done so far. We have these pictures that has come out from Vovchansk so far. The first one shows heavy shelling and the smoke that is rising from the ruins of Vovchansk in the south following heavy shelling from the Russians. Second picture, yet again more smoke from the results of heavy shelling on Ukrainian positions across the river line. And this third picture is yet another picture of the destroyed buildings within Vovchansk. The Russians are heavily bombarding Vovchansk day in and day out as they continue their offensive operations in the north. At the same time, we have this video here which shows additional trucks and armored vehicles being sent to the northern front. We see the markings, the northern grouping of armed forces of the Russians being marked on all of these trucks, and the railway is sending these troop carriers, which indicates that they are going to be launching more troop operations. And more interesting, there are these trucks that look like they carry pontoon bridges for river crossings. So we are seeing that the new stage is going to include these river crossings. There's also amphibious vehicles and tanks being sent. So the operations are significantly increasing in these coming days, following the reinforcements arriving in the northern front, where the Russians' aim will be to gain control over the northern parts of the river line and cross over to gain control over the southern parts as well, while they expand the front line. Further south here in the direction of Bilohorivka, we see similar footage, but this is of the actual action as the Russians heavily bombard the village. The village itself is not very large, but we do see heavy shelling taking place from the one end to the other as Russians are trying to completely destroy the village in its entirety ahead of taking control of it. Instead of the Russians aiming for a village located here in the outskirts of the Luhansk region, they're instead looking to gain control over the heights near it, where they can then take control over the area and start offensive operations in the direction of Siversk. Moving further south in the direction of Klischiivka in the southern flank of Bahmut, the Russians have gained full control of the town. And this also includes the forest patches to the southwest, northwest, and the fortifications northwest of the village. With this, the Russians now have full control over the heights surrounding Klischiivka to the west. This has allowed them to significantly strengthen their positions in this section of the front line, and this will lead to the Ukrainians being pushed back in the southern flank of Bahmut. The upcoming days will see the Russians launching further operations to gain full control over the southern flank and push the Ukrainians back across the canal line. This will take place with fighting taking place over the fortifications northwest of Klischiivka and west of Andrivka. This will lead to the Ukrainians withdrawing back across, and as we can see here on the western border of the canal line, there's hardly any fortifications located in the area and it's largely open fields. This means that the Russians can cross over by the canal crossings, which will allow them to push across and start offensive operations on the western side of the canal. This will allow the Russians to expand the front line southwest of Bahmut, and with their own defensive positions along the canal, they'll be able to have a significant amount of concentrated forces here in the southern parts to push across, similar to when the Wagner forces started attacking the direction of Stupushki and Predeshine. In this section of the front line, the city of Chasiv Yar overlooks the entirety of the area with the high ground elevated positions it is placed within. As we see with this topographic map, to the south there is Novooleksandrivka and the Russian positions along the canal here that goes to this area right here, where the Ukrainians still hold high ground positions like Donets and New York to the south. This area right here is Ukrainian positions where they have defensive positions. This prevents the Russians from taking advantage of the high ground positions in the south to push towards the Ukrainian positions towards Konstantinivka. The area here is heavily fortified by the Ukrainians. Further north, there is the heights west or southwest of Bahmut, which is split between the Russian and Ukrainian positions. Now the Russians have captured the heights here by Klischiivka, which has significantly improved their positions. And with that, they will continue to gain control over the heights here east of the canal, after which they'll advance through the heights towards the western parts of it. We see the canal moving through here in the area. So with this, we see that the direction of Chasiv Yar itself is located on the heights of about 244 meters, where Konstantinivka is about 82 meters and Bahmut is about 94 meters. So that's a 150 meter advantage on Chasiv Yar. And we see Chasiv Yar is located in this area at the high ground at the heart of this whole area, going from Konstantinivka to Slovyansk in the northwest and Siversk to Bahmut in the east. So Russians gaining control over the Chasiv Yar direction, the town, city itself, and moving across the canal line to gain control over the rest of it, would allow the Russians to gain control over the heights in the entirety of this area and overlook anywhere from Siversk, Slovyansk, Konstantinivka, and else all of these cities of the Ukrainian positions in the Donetsk region. This means that the Russian objective here is to move west from Klischiivka, gain control over the canal line here to the south, move across through Stupushki and up to Chasiv Yar along the southern flank of it, gain control over the city itself, then expand in all directions to gain control over the heights north and northwest of the city, to start offensive operations in the direction of Konstantinivka, Kramatorsk, Slovyansk, and Siversk. Further south here in the direction of Novooleksandrivka, the Russians started storming the town, following assault operations, taking control over the fortifications in the area both to the east and south of the town. And with this, the Russians have started storming operations within the town of Novooleksandrivka, where they are going to gain a foothold, which they have with this geolocated footage here, and push through the town. This is in connection to the operation northwest of Vovchansk, where the objective is to reach the highway between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. This will allow the Russians to start operations here in the direction of the north or west, where they will be attacking Konstantinivka from the north of Avdiivka, from the direction of this highway northwest of Vovchansk towards Konstantinivka, or directly towards Pokrovsk from the east here, towards Mirohad and other areas by Pokrovsk. This is to cut the supplies here going through from Pokrovsk to Konstantinivka, which is the main supply hub to the Donetsk region of the Ukrainians. And further south, this will likely be in connection with forces moving through Netelove following the capture of the town, westward towards Klischiivka and northward towards Novooleksandrivka to secure the southern flank, as Russians will look to push further in this section of the front line. Taking a look at the topographic map here, we see Avdiivka is located in the heights, moving north along the railways towards Vovchansk. It continues along the heights, and then the area here by Vovchansk towards Novooleksandrivka is all located in the heights. That means that the Russians' current objective is to move through the heights to gain control over as many settlements of the Ukrainians as possible. This includes Arkhangelsk, which they captured, Keramik and Novokalinova here to the east of Vovchansk, and further northwards as they continue taking advantage of the heights. The area in which they're currently fighting at is the heights west of Arkhangelsk and east of Novooleksandrivka, where they have captured the majority of them. This has allowed the Russians to push towards Novooleksandrivka, where they'll take advantage of the heights that they're located at about 231 meters compared to Novooleksandrivka at 200 meters. That is a slight elevation advantage of 30 meters. Further onwards, we see that it goes down to 170 and 150 meters, increasing the advantage the Russians have by Novooleksandrivka. And this continues all the way to the highway. They will move through the high grounds towards it, after which they'll move along it, and again, the highways, the roads, the railways are all located on the high grounds, and the Russians are taking advantage of that to push through, gain control over the towns as they continue moving through them, through the high grounds, and push through to storm these villages and towns. Based on this, we see that the Russian operations here by Avdiivka is northwest through Novooleksandrivka towards the highway between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. directly north towards Konstantinivka along the high ground there as well, west of Chasiv Yar towards Konstantinivka, and west of Klischiivka across the canal towards Konstantinivka. This is also in an attempt to bypass the Ukrainian defensive positions by Donets and New York west of Novooleksandrivka. This will allow the Russians to gain control over the heights, all the area here southwest of Konstantinivka, south of Konstantinivka, and east of Konstantinivka, gaining height advantage from all three directions and pushing through towards the city. Moving through that and gaining control of it will secure the Russian positions and expand the area here that they have under their control to move towards the heights east of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, cutting off Siversk from these cities and starting the assault on those as well. And this will be the final battles over the Donetsk region. Following that, the Russians will focus completely on Pokrovsk and this town chain here north of Pokrovsk on the western outskirts of the region. So with this, we see that the final battles over the Donetsk region are within reach in this Russian summer offensive, and this could be an offensive that continues until the Russian full control over the Donetsk region. And with that, I'll end off this video. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon for additional content. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.